Okay, Ruth chapter 3 and 4. The end. Ruth, second part. Okay. So we've been talking about the woman developing emotional intelligence, developing the courage to speak her mind. These are all excellent skills, right? That we talked about how it's important as women to become in touch with their voice, right? And one of the main reasons of that, again, is that in the Hebrew Bible, the woman represents wisdom. The woman is the seat of wisdom. And so for centuries, we have stayed silent. And for centuries, wisdom has been kept under closed doors, right? So we are in a time now where we are finally expressing ourselves, saying what we think, in tune with our desires, in tune with our vision, and wisdom is again operating in the world, right? So of course, what we must learn, and this is also a sign of wisdom, it's not enough to have something to say, we must learn how to say it. If you read the book of Proverbs, which is really a book about wisdom, there is so much emphasis on how to speak as much as on what to speak, right? So this is really the realm of woman. I mean, I know some of us are saying, well, why woman is in charge of everything? No, woman is not in charge of everything. But when it comes to wisdom, this is our portion. This is our inheritance. This is our lot. This is what we have been given as a task. And part of wisdom is speaking and learning how to speak, right? So the man has a totally different task in the Hebrew Bible, right? But in as much as we are the seat of wisdom, we need to learn not only to speak, but also how to speak it so that we can be received, right? So this is more to do with the wisdom than with the need to, cater to a man who is an idiot and who cannot understand us when we talk, right? This is not about us, what's the word? Enabling the man's stupidity and the man's incapacity for hearing us. This is not about us enabling anything. This is us coming into our power, right? In the Hebrew Bible, the woman's voice has enormous power if she knows how to use it, because it is coming from the seat of wisdom, right? So I know that if I was at my therapist right now, she would she would disagree with me and say, well, the man also has a responsibility. It's not all on you. I agree, but the wisdom part is, right? I take that. I take this wisdom part, and knowing what to say and learning what to say is really, this is our inheritance. This is our kingdom. And we need to cultivate this, right? Because this is our forte. This is the destiny that we have been called to, right? So, of course, the man has another destiny, which we'll talk about in a second. Christo Dulu, already. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, it reminds me of like the Genesis stories that we went through, that we are both men and women made of the same thing, but we are made independently of each other. And so we have our own like issues, let's say, and our own realm of responsibility.
Right, exactly, yeah. And I think it goes again to the question of the mother's house versus the father's house, right? Father's house is giving us the laws that we need to function as an individual, as a society, and all of this is good, right? But in the mother's house, we focus on wisdom, right? And so, and as women, we have a specific task, according to the Hebrew Bible, to transmit wisdom. And so, of course, if we are to transmit wisdom, even independently of the man, this is transmitting wisdom to a political ruler, transmitting wisdom to children, transmitting wisdom to our family. This is independent of the man. We have the task to transmit wisdom and to learn how to transmit it, right? In other words, how do we speak, for example, to a child in order for them to understand what we are saying and receive what we're saying? How do we speak to a neighbor? How do we speak to a friend, a girlfriend, right? And how do we speak to a man? But in general, right, the speaking of wisdom is our territory, and learning how to speak it is as important as learning to speak. The man is another realm. So I hope it's helping some of us, right, who are saying, oh, why I got to do all the work? No, you got to do your work. The work of women is this. And it's not only related to the man, right? In this story it is, but it is related to any human being around. We have been given the power to speak wisdom into people's lives. learning how to do so is essential. It's as essential to learn how to speak to a child and to a teenager and to a parent and to a husband, right? All of this is part of the woman's inheritance, right? In this story, of course, it focuses how she speaks to the man, but in general, this should be broader. We should be thinking as women, I need to speak, and how do I speak so that I'm heard by this child, this teenager, this neighbor, this pet, right? This husband, right? So I just want to really emphasize that this is not putting the burden on the woman and the man has nothing to do. This is really giving us back our power. And of course, connected to that, right? If the man wants to engage with a woman, if the man wants to be wise, period, he has to be in touch with a woman. So I want to emphasize this because this is what the text is saying, and we're going to see this. I'm going to conclude with that. But the man, of course, he's doing the laws, but if he's going to legislate wisely, he has to be in touch with a woman. The wisdom was not given to the man, was given to the woman, according to the Hebrew Bible. So the man who is incapable of listening will never tap into wisdom. He will do things and create laws that are foolish, right? So let's go back to Boaz now and see what he can teach the man among us. Okay, so love this. I love this. So first of all, watch this, right? Boaz, first response, right? Beautiful response. I will do for you all that you ask, right? This is the last part that I wanted to talk about. Now, watch how, in a way, what he is doing now is basically taking on the divine prerogative as the divine wings, right? And shielding her. So in a way, what he's brought to do by Ruth, first of all, is beyond the call of duty. I want to make sure that's understood, right? We know that already. It's beyond the call of duty. He's doing more than he should. But in doing more than he should, he becomes the embodiment of God himself, because God is always doing more than he should, right? God is, remember, we studied the word chesed, right? Which is one of Ruth's attributes. This is undeserved love, right? That's how we defined it. So this is one of the attributes of God. When Boaz is going over and beyond what he should do, what is his duty to do, is embodying the divine chesed. In other words, he is rising to a very high level of embodying the divine protection and the divine love and the divine redemption, right? So in a way, what she's doing then in the story is elevating him to a higher version of himself. And I want to say that again, because this is really what's happening. He's already good, right? He's Eshet Chayil, like her, right? Warrior man, right? But he is still just bound by duty in the story. In the story, all he's doing is keeping the laws until Ruth walks in his life. Watch this. She comes to his field and she's gleaning. This is not him being gracious. This is the law. The foreigners were allowed to glean in the fields and pick up after the harvesters. So he's just following the law. But then you see some cracks where he's giving her a little bit extra food. He's calling her next to him. He's feeding her, right, a piece of bread. So he's starting to break beyond the duty. But Ruth really, she completely breaks open, right? This man, from just being like Job, a nice guy, right? Walking the line, to this powerful manifestation of divine chesed, right? So I hope you're seeing that not only does he deliver her, the obvious in the story is he delivers her, but really on the metaphysical level, on the spiritual level, it is she who delivers him, right? From the harnesses of just doing my civil duty. Now he has exploded those limitations and is really embodying something much greater, right? By marrying her and providing and buying the field and so forth, right? So the first thing we need to realize, I think, if in as much as I'm teaching this to men, the first thing that men need to realize from this story, I believe, is that the woman, right, is that in a way, listening to the woman is a way to get to one's higher self, and it's the only way. A man can already be good by himself, but he will never reach the true level of his selfhood if he is not in touch with a woman. And this is what the story is saying, right? The story is saying until Ruth walked into his life, his world was good, solid, but it was small. And she's the one that exploded it and brought him to an extremely high level. She brought him beyond duty to chesed, right? So first thing we're learning, right, is that in a way, by listening to the woman is the only way that the man can become all that he was meant to be. That's what the story is teaching. And this is actually very Near Eastern, right? I'll tell you a story. In the Sumerian literature, what the hell? Why my camera turned off? Oh, great. Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah. No. Can you guys hear me? Ah, I'm back. Can you hear me still? Okay, great. Okay, so I want to tell you a story in the Sumerian literature which goes along with that, right? In a way, how the connection with the woman empowers the man, which is something we don't always talk about, right? We talk about in the Western culture, the man finds power by detaching himself from the woman, by becoming a high-powered executive, by making money, by having a house. Woman has nothing. Woman is just, trailing along. So in our culture, power in a man is found alone in his individual achievements. The text is saying, no, you cannot rise to the highest level of your power if you're not in connection with a woman. So here's the story. This is Inanna and Dumutzi, right? This is very classic story of the sacred marriage. Dumutzi is her lover. Dumutzi was, so Inanna is a goddess, right? We know this. And Dumutzi is just a shepherd boy. He's nobody, right? And she falls in love with him. And, they have they start a courtship, right? And then she marries him. And the day after the wedding night, she comes to him and she says, here is your crown and here is your scepter. Right? So in other words, in the ancient Near East, it was believed that, and I think we talked about this already, that the contact with the feminine energy is what really empowers the man to rule well. I think we talked about this when we talked about Adam and Eve, right? The contact with the female energy, with the feminine energy through sexuality, right? Because this is the way to really come intimately in contact with a woman. So sexuality in the ancient Near East, the sexual relationship, the intimate contact between the man and a woman was the only way a man would become empowered to rule the city well. So the kings would reenact this ritual every year by sleeping with the high priestess who represented the goddess, right? And just reenacting this idea that I'm not a legitimate king if I have not been in contact with a woman, right? So here we have something very similar, that he does not become fully himself. He does not have full development of his faculties as a man. He does not fully embody God until he has come in intimate contact with a woman, right? And so realizing this, I think, is going to give an incentive, right, to the man to listen to the woman. Because for now, to listen to the woman just means, oh, bother, right? I have to listen to this woman and do what she wants, and she is entering. I know people like that, right? So I know very close friends of mine, right, where for the man, listening to his wife is just, right? It's like, she's all into my space and I have to change all my habits and I don't want to do it like this. And it's just a big impediment, right? If men were to understand that as the woman speaks, they are growing, right? I think it would make the man much more prone to listen to the woman, right? And so here the text is emphasizing that to become wise, the woman has to be the man has to be in connection to the woman. There's a beautiful passage in the Tao Te Ching, in the Chinese work, right? And it says, I think I mentioned this already too, the ruler, so the ideal, I guess, the ideal ruler sticks to the female, right? This is the text from the Tao Te Ching. We're basically saying, if you want to be a well-balanced ruler over your whatever, your land or your people or your family as a man, if you want to rule properly, you have to be in connection with a female. You have to have developed your feminine energy, been open to the woman. The Jewish tradition says something similar when it says in the Talmud that until you marry, you cannot be a true teacher. So rabbis, before they became rabbis, the part that they needed to achieve was to get married, and then they could practice as rabbis. So they could have just learned theoretically the material, they had to also be in contact with the woman if they were going to be wise in their teaching. So it's not enough to memorize the law and to go over the text. You have to have wisdom as you enter the scripture and teach it. So there is a whole tradition in the ancient Near East and in the East, we see, where the man who is not in touch with the woman cannot reach his full potential, cannot truly lead, right? So here the invitation in this text, right, is really for the man to realize that opening himself up to the woman's voice is the key to his own self-development, right? If the man wants to reach highest level of empowerment and power, this opening up is crucial. You can be a good man, but you will never be an extraordinary man until you have dipped into the feminine energy, right? So we're seeing here that in a way they both lift each other up, right? He lifts her up materially, but she lifts him up spiritually. And watch how their marriage is described. This is very powerful. The text says, Boaz married Ruth. That should be enough, right? But the text continues, and she became his wife. Now let's stop on that a little bit and see what's going on. Why does the text not stop with just, and Boaz married Ruth? Why does it add, and she became his wife? Let's see what's going on. What is the narrator trying to tell us? Oh, no. Rudolph, go ahead.
Well, that's the story of the sugar daddy. If he marries her, she's materially all taken care of. But what she instead does is connect with this man and makes him part of her life. Due to her credit, she completes him. She is the one initiating. She is attacking, if you will. She's not a docile person, and she takes charge.
Yeah, notice the balance, right? He marries her, and usually that should be enough. He takes her, right? But then she becomes his wife. So there is here the weight is reciprocal, right? He marries her, she becomes it. The text is showing how in a way there is a powerful agency on both parts. He makes the decision and she accepts it, right? So this is saying in a way that here she is willingly giving herself in this relationship, not just enduring or submitting to it, right? So the text is emphasizing again how they are, the equality between the two partners, right? They're both Eshet Chayil, Eshet Gibor, Chesed, and of course it's interesting, he is seen as the word redeemer, just to go over that a little bit. Gaal in the Hebrew is for redeemer, right? And this is also, like for Ruth, another name for God, right? So in as much as he finally fulfills this redemptive calling, he is becoming, or he is embodying the attribute of Gaal, just like she is embodying the attribute of Chesed. So we are seeing these two, how they're lifting each other up, right? And this is kind of different from the Near Eastern here, because in the ancient Near East, only the woman empowers the man, but here the man also empowers the woman, right? So there is a reciprocity, which is interesting. So this brings us to so any questions or comments on this before I go into the final section, which is the renewal of the cosmos? Anybody want to add anything about this? The way that the man can connect to the new woman that Ruth is becoming, right? Any questions on that or comments? Okay, good. So let's go to the last part, which is the renewal of the cosmos. Now we're going to see that this relationship not only going to benefit both parties, or not only going to elevate both parties, right, but are going to elevate the whole world around them. So I want to go over each point, right, see how this relationship has profoundly shifted not only their own selves, but the whole cosmos around them, right? And this is typical, right, of this kind of a powerful power couple relationship, right? Because that's what they are. They're a power couple. When you get into a relationship with your soulmate and form this type of power couple dynamic, the world shifts, right? This is what the text is saying, right? When you find the right partner who is your equal, eshet chayil, eshet gibor, and with whom you have this unprecedented equality and communication and listening, the couple which achieves this has the power to shift the whole cosmos, right? This is what we mean by have a power couple, right? Power couple in the biblical text, this is the description, right? This is two people who are on the same wavelength spiritually already. This is two people who are able to receive each other, right? Ruth is able to speak her truth. Her husband is able to receive her truth. This is what it means to be a power couple, right? And when you enter this dynamic, right, if you're capable of creating this dynamic in your relationship, the whole universe will shift along with you. And this is what we're going to see. So this is why I say, you know, there's two types of redemption of the world, right? In the Bible, we talk about redemption of the world through a kind of messianic figure who comes and saves everybody. There's another way to do this, right? Power couples. If we had more power couples, we would already be in the messianic age, right? So this is a very other alternative path to the renewal of the world, is the renewal of the relationships between the man and the woman. The day we can renew those relationships is the day we will begin to shift the whole cosmic balance, right, into back into balance. So the whole cosmic imbalance back into balance. So let's look a little bit what they have done. So first of all, we have the renewal of Ruth and Boaz, right? Watch this. So of course we know for her, now going back into the meaning of her name, right? This was someone who was barren, right? She had no children. And now all of a sudden she becomes truly saturated, watered, right? So barrenness has to do with it, dryness, right? Drought. And now she becomes, right, saturated with, you know, this child, with fertility and so forth. So in a way, she is renewed by the relationship. We saw already how Boaz is renewed, right? Boaz in a way is pushed or challenged by Ruth to reach higher than just duty, to enter the realm of chesed, to embody the divine attribute of Gaal. And so he becomes the true version of himself, right? So both of them, we see how they are transformed, right? But it goes deeper. Then we see, of course, the renewal of Naomi, right? We see that when they place the child, right, on her lap, this is her line is rejuvenated, her, right, the line of her family continues, right? It's not cut off anymore. We see religious renewal in the way that Boaz, right, is stretching the law. We talked about this, right? How he ends up marrying, buying the land, kind of mixing all these different duties into, which he didn't have to do anyways, right? He kind of stretches it and puts himself in the place of the one who is supposed to buy the territory. So he's kind of stretching the law in order to be able to do this. And so we're seeing here how very mother's house, right, moment of transgression, but for the sake of something higher like chesed. And then finally we have the renewal of the whole cosmic people of Israel, right, because of the royal line that is now able to continue, and the birth of King David, right? So it's interesting, by the way, that we see that, and this is the political statement I made earlier, Israel is not polluted by the foreigners in its midst. What this story is teaching us is Israel is revitalized by the foreigners in its midst, right? So very powerful political statement that we are not impeded or polluted or, you know, by the foreigners in our midst, but the foreigners in the midst of a political entity can rejuvenate that entity, right? So that's one of the that's one of the lessons here. I just want to end this passage on, there's a quote from the Talmudic, or from the rabbis, from the sages, that talk about Solomon. Because you know that Ruth is the great-great-grandmother of Solomon, right? King David was the father of Solomon. So this is the quote. I thought it was interesting. It says this: Ruth the Moabite did not die until she saw her descendant Solomon sitting and judging the case of the harlots. So I want to talk about that a little bit because it'll give us some deeper insight on Solomon that we've studied. What does this text mean? That when Solomon was judging the case between the harlots, Ruth was in the room. What are the sages trying to say? Let me remind you of the story. Two prostitutes came to Solomon, and this was the story they told. So one of them woke up in the middle of the night and saw her child was dead, right? And so she was sleeping next to her friend, another prostitute, who also had a child, and so she switched the children. The next day, the other prostitute wakes up and she's like, this is not my kid. She looks over, she's like, that's my kid. And the other prostitute is like, no, what do you mean? No, your kid died, right? So they're fighting over this kid, right? And they go to Solomon, and Solomon says, he listens, right? And he thinks a little bit, and then he says, bring me the kid. So they bring the kid to Solomon, and he takes a sword and he says, very simple solution. I will cut the kid in half. You get half, she gets half. And the real mother screams and is like, no, don't do that. Just let her keep the kid. And the other mother stays silent, right? And so Solomon immediately is able to detect who is the true mother, right? It's the one who broke into a scream when she saw that he was about to cut the baby. So that's just a story. So why do you think that Solomon's wisdom in this rabbinic text is connected to Ruth? Anybody want to expound on that a little bit? Why do the rabbis connect his wisdom to his great-grandmother Ruth being in the room? What does this tell us? What are they trying to say? Let's analyze that a little bit. What is it in having a great-great-grandmother being a foreigner? What is it in that which could have triggered Solomon's wisdom or made him wise? What do you think? What is the connection between his great wisdom and having a great-grandmother who is not a Jew, but a foreigner? I'm not going to tell you the answer. I'm just going to leave you in suspense. If you don't answer, you just go home without knowing the answer to this.
Well, it's sort of, I guess, wisdom beyond the known limits, right? It's not just the wisdom from the Jewish world, it's wisdom from beyond, right?
Good. Wisdom in essence is transgressive. Wisdom in essence goes beyond. This is philosophy. This is why all of you should study philosophy. If you want to think outside the box, you don't need to take drugs to do that. I know some of you thinking, I will open my mind by taking drugs. No, the best way to open your mind, there's two ways. Be with a woman, right? And take philosophy, right? Because both are wisdom, right? So this is what we're learning, is that the fact that, first of all, there was a female figure, right? Ruth represents a woman in the courtroom, so he would have been influenced by this great-grandmother, so he is therefore wise. And she's foreign, which means that wisdom, by essence, breaks away from the narrow systems that we have built for ourselves. Wisdom is always gonna think outside of the box. Wisdom is the ability to think outside of the box. Just to give you an example, what I told you last time, remember when I was mad at my friend and I was gonna kick her out in the middle of the house, in the middle of the night, and the next day opened to me a different scenario, a different way of seeing this. That's wisdom, right? Wisdom is the ability to see things in a different light than your light, right? And Ruth, the presence of Ruth represents that. She is the other light. She is the other perspective. And so Solomon is wise because in his lineage, there is a different perspective. There's a different way of seeing things. And this is what makes him so wise, right? So we have some lessons on wisdom, is the ability to put yourself in a different perspective, to see things in a different light, to be in someone else's shoes. That's wisdom, right? So anyways, yeah, so just wanted to just add that to our discussion. Okay, so this is the story of Ruth. Hopefully you're seeing a little better why it connects to the mother's house, the importance of for the man of listening, for the woman of really embracing the calling of wisdom that she has, And bringing the two together is what really, when a man is able to listen and a woman is able to talk, is the end. We have achieved world peace. Right? The day that we get to a point where men can listen and women can talk, we will be done with this world. We will have achieved everything we have to achieve. This is what the text is saying. Cosmic harmony is not just keeping the laws, right? The Greeks believed that. The Greeks believed when you keep the laws, right, of the gods, or the laws that men have written, the laws of not stealing, not killing, right? All of these important laws, when you keep the law, this is when you find cosmic harmony. Here in the book of Ruth, it's different. Cosmic harmony, when the man and the woman have a balanced relationship. That's what brings you. So you see how it's very different. It's the mother's house, where the father's house, the law is preserving cosmic harmony. In the mother's house, it is the quality of the relationships that is protecting cosmic harmony. It is the balance between the male and the female that is ensuring cosmic harmony. And so that's the main difference here between the Greek view, right, on the cosmos, and the Hebrew view, or at least father's house, mother's house view. Okay, any questions or comments about anything we talked about, clarification before we say goodbye? I was glad to see a little more women participation. I guess it was a trigger today. So that was nice. No, everything clear? Everybody happy? Okay. So in this case, we shall conclude. I will stop the recording.